Hello everyone. As you may have already figured out from my last upload, I'm going to be talking about Bill Maher's roundtable discussion with Colion Noir. Before I begin, there are a few things I have to say now that I forgot to say in my last video. I'm definitely going to be partial towards Colion in this debate, so take what I say about him with a grain of salt. I will mainly be focusing on the debate table and what they have to say about guns, so without much further explanation, let's just get right to it.
Neera, Tanden, what should the Democrats be doing to attract disaffected Republicans who are fleeing the GOP? Are we catching them in the net?
You know, my view of this is that you're right, that the country is facing an existential threat right now, and we have to make alliances wherever. And so I think we should welcome them. I think we have to recognize that accountability is only going to come.
You're a Trump voter, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, see? We're friends.
Yeah.
Okay, I know she hasn't said anything yet, but listen to her tone when she talks about trying to be friends with Colion after she learns he's a Trump voter, and look at the expression on her face. She cannot look him in the eyes.
Yeah.
We got to talk to each other.
I agree.
We got
I agree.
We got to share this country. We got to start talking and making inroads. We can't just go to our camps.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree.
Right.
I think we have to recognize that democracy is at stake and welcome them with open arms.
Okay. Let's see. Black Knight asked Colion, is there anything that could happen that would make you say, okay, we need stricter common sense gun laws?
It's interesting because it's amazing to me how everything always goes to we need stricter gun laws in response to everything with respect to firearms. I think there needs to be a more holistic look and approach to it, because if we take into account the way things were before, we have more gun laws now than we did before, but yet supposedly we're still dealing with.
Because we did get rid.
I had the question written on the screen so you could see how Colion really doesn't answer it directly because he knows it's a trap. If he says yes, he looks like a sellout, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter the reasoning behind why he says yes, no one will listen to the reason. If he says no, he looks like a stereotypical gun nut they expect him to be. He completely avoided the trap question, and from what I can tell, he was going to say, let's look at multiple factors to see what could be the most effective cause of higher gun violence, and what could be a possible solution or solutions, because we tried banning guns and it didn't go well. Personally, my answer to the question would have been evidence. Both loosening and tightening gun control has had mixed effects, both positive and negative. It's almost like guns aren't the problem, it's the people using them. I know Colion believes this, but as you're about to see, he isn't quite able to make his point across.
Of the assault weapons ban, there are states that have actually deregulated gun laws over the last 10, 15 years.
That would have been a really good counterpoint for her if she would have cited some kind of crime statistics in the areas where they loosened gun control and was able to show how in each and every state they would have had an increase in gun crime or gun murder or whatever metric they used to try and win the point, but she didn't. So it's really a pointless point, if you will.
You say 20 to 30 years ago we have less guns or more?
You know, I'd say in the 1990s we had an assault weapons ban, and that was actually ended, and that was important. And in the South, they've passed a bunch of things to undo restrictions on guns.
Like stand your ground.
Like stand your ground.
That's not it. You don't stand your ground?
Those of you who saw my last video will know what's coming here. This is the part I was referencing when I said Bill talks to Colion primarily as a black man rather than just as a man. Watch how the table walks on eggshells around Colion to try and use their because you're black routine on Colion without actually saying it. This is actually pretty cringy.
Yeah, of course, Andrew. Why wouldn't it be? Yeah.
Well, for one reason, I mean, the statistics on black people standing their ground against white people versus the reverse does not come out well for black people.
Yeah. Now, so
Yeah, absolutely.
Like only I think.
So I should forfeit my right to own.
No. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that specific law, stand your ground.
And
Again, where is the evidence? From their perspective, Colion can be shot in the street tomorrow, and if the killer is white, well then he just gets away with it. Colion had the right response here, which essentially egged them on to double down, which of course they did.
Where if I'm scared, I get to shoot you, is the way I interpret stand your ground.
Right.
And that's really how it's
And the police enforce it in that way.
And when it's a...
Can you imagine having this mindset? The absolutely genuine belief that cops are racist, the courts are racist, and the judges are racist? That not only do they take part in these crimes, but that they willingly let white people specifically get away with it? And that's not what I'm saying. That's what this round table is saying. And in case anyone forgot, this same table is on the side of taking guns away from Colion. In one breath, they say, oh, the poor black man. And then the chaser to that is, well, we still need to take his guns away. Colion is a saint for keeping his patience here. And to be perfectly clear, I'm not saying there can't be racist cops or courts or whatever, but you have to show me the evidence where they are, and then together we can condemn them.
White person shooting a black person, that is forgiven a lot more than the reverse.
If that is the case, right, and then that's predicated on race, right, in terms of disproportionate effect of stand your ground laws,
right,
then of course that's a criminal justice issue, right? Then yeah, something needs to be done about that. But the idea that if somebody is threatening my life, I shouldn't have to be forced to retreat to a wall before I decide to defend my life if they're threatening it, no?
Is there any better way to show the audience that this table has no idea what they're talking about than to ask them exactly what they believe? Good for Colion. Listen to their answers.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just always been the law. I mean, people have loosened. Stand your ground has changed the...
So you're not inherently against the idea and the concept of stand your ground. You're just against the way it's been applied.
No, I think stand your ground is basically makes it so that it's easier to kill somebody, and I object to that.
Frankly, this is my favorite point for anti-gunners to bring up. Listen again to what she said. She thinks it's okay to defend oneself, but not lethally. She just said, I don't want you to kill someone trying to deliberately do you harm. And the crowd goes wild. It takes a special kind of denial to look at someone in the face and say, you can defend yourself in the ways I see fit. It's really a shame Bill didn't stand up here and repeat what he said in his one-on-one with Colion. It looked like this.
It's very easy for people who live in safe neighborhoods to talk about gun control. It's a whole different story for some other folks who don't have that luxury.
I really wanted this to be a hallmark of what a debate should look like, but unfortunately this table has nothing more than emotional appeals to enforce their will upon those they deem unfit. Having said that, I think this roundtable did more to help the pro-gun side than hurt it. Colion was definitely the calmer and more polite party, and didn't fall for very many of their trap questions. Although I will say he did let himself get walked on at times, but I can't blame him for taking a few punches in a 1v5.
It's basically like, you know, we had a rule, which is your life has to be, the normal rule before stand your ground was that your life had to be threatened. And with stand your ground, it's like anything that you perceive as a threat. That's the problem.
That's the part.
I hate to keep interrupting these people, but there's just so much wrong, it's really hard to keep myself quiet. There are two ways we can look at stand your ground. The first is their way, which is you can defend yourself, but conditions apply, and that's for the apparently racist cops to enforce and interpret. And then there's this dangerous new interpretation of stand your ground, which says the individual determines what is threatening and whether or not to act. I believe in the individual. Do you, Bill and Co?
That's the problem.
It seems like that's a slippery slope.
Again, then that's predicated on a subjective standard, right? Would that not be?
The standard is inherently subjective in a self-defense.
Well, because my understanding of stand your ground from an objective standard is I'm not forced to have my back against the wall if my life is threatened to defend my life, right? So
I don't think that's a requirement of stand your ground.
I'm going on to the next question. I'm standing my ground here. I realize you could just pour something in the test tube and make it better.
Right. Well,
it's not that easy, but they didn't have that option at all 50 years ago.
But the antidepressants we have, actually, many people don't like taking them. Their effectiveness fades over time. They're very hard to get off. So they
cause suicide.
And they cause suicide, yes. Right. Yet, if there's a suicide blamed on LSD, that's a huge story.
Right.
But it's kind of routine.
Can I just say that our problems are not a constant? I'm not a Luddite when I say this, but I think the technology has completely upended mental health in this country. And we all love Uber. We want to order a car. I'm going to go to Open Table and get a dinner reservation. But so many of our kids are now shut-ins, devoid of personal interaction, and instead creating identities that just don't match reality.
This might be off topic, but has anyone else noticed that older people love to blame kids for how they were raised? I don't know who this guy is, but here he's essentially saying that these kids should have been raised better, but it's not the parents' fault. I don't understand how... kids can't raise themselves.
That's driving a lot of this.
It's disconnection. It's really disconnection. That's at the root of depression, addiction, obsession, all
The
these
phone.
things.
It's the damn phones.
Well, this is the
People live on the
It actually
Well,
is
that's another
in some
addiction,
respects.
right?
Yeah.
That's another form of
terrible addiction.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I don't think she agrees. I don't think she agreed with that.
I mean, we see suicide rates have increased amongst older men, rural communities. People, I mean, it's not universal.
This is the gun
rate.
problem. A majority of gun deaths in the U.S. are suicide,
Yes.
and the research is much clearer on gun control and gun ownership rates and suicide than with homicide. It's the crime rate effects are unclear. The suicide rate effects are very clear. If there are fewer guns out there, people attempt suicide as much, but they don't succeed as often because
That's absolutely not true.
I hope you all heard that. He said, people attempt suicide as much, but they don't succeed as much. That is a complete and full admission that this entire table does not care one iota about a major problem in this country. Even Neera can see that male suicide is high and is getting higher, but they don't care about people who attempt suicide, and they don't care about reducing attempts. They only want to stop successes. And while I can certainly see the appeal in that, I can't help but see the logically better choice of finding out why people are killing themselves in the first place. Guns are entirely irrelevant to the problem, but they want it to be the problem so bad they're willing to overlook reality, and that's what's scary.
that's
that's
absolutely true.
totally
You see the
right.
changes
Really?
in gun ownership.
If, that were if there was a direct correlation between the number of guns that were available and suicides, we would be leading the world in suicides.
There are also cultural
We are.
factors. We have
Suicides
different
are
cultural
increasing.
makeups.
Suicides are increasing in the U.S.
You see fewer suicides among Black and Hispanic people than among white and Asian people, independent of gun ownership. So we have demographic advantages. We should have an even bigger advantage over other advanced countries in suicide rates than we do.
And also, we do have most guns, but they're in the hands of fewer people. In other words, the people who like guns have many guns. There was a guy last week they caught with 553 guns. You have that picture of this guy's arsenal? Oh my God, this is what they found in this guy's house. Now, come on.
Is it shocking someone had 500 guns in their house? Honestly, not really. If you can legally own them, buy as many as you want. The part they don't mention is that this individual was a felon who acquired over 500 guns. My first question was, wow, who dropped the ball on this one? And here's the kicker. He was in Los Angeles, the state with more murder than the national average, in the same city where Bill Maher and his table are telling you how dangerous guns are. Yeah, let's increase gun control. I'm sure it'll work really well.
Irony.
Is that too many guns?
That doesn't stress you out. That doesn't bother you at all.
Not giving
like
an
that
inch.
many
Well,
guns.
Really?
Okay, so here's the thing about that, right?
Not too many guns. That was a lot
at some
of
point,
guns.
what's one more? I think the distinction is this. Look, we have to understand something, right? So I get it, right? You're not a gun person, right?
No, I'm actually worried about a person like that basically killing a lot of, having the ability to easily kill lots of people
only has two
with
hands.
no regulation.
Unfortunately, this is where Colion gets ran over and flattened. Partially because he gets talked over, partially because his points don't land with this audience, and partially because they seem to only understand purely emotional reasoning. In recent memory, the last person to go on a murderous rampage with a large collection of guns was the Las Vegas shooter. Before that, honestly, I can't think of any others. But for the sake of argument, let's say there were 10 mass murders from gun collectors in any time span over 5 years. These statistics still do not justify Neera's fear of this guy going on a rampage simply because he has a large gun collection. To quote her, she said, "I'm worried about a person like that easily killing people." Neera looks at someone who collects guns as a mass murderer in the making. Keep that in mind.
That guy
I'm
did.
sorry, what does that mean he only has two hands? People are getting slaughtered by one person. Children are being slaughtered by one child.
You're inherently attributing a negative character to firearms. Outright, right?
Yes, because lots of people die at firearms. That's why I do that.
That's the same. The same could be said of cars, right? But you're not advocating banning cars or limiting people's access to vehicles.
You can't take, I mean, the number of people who are murdered by guns is much higher than the people murdered by cars.
To Neera's credit, more people are murdered by guns than by cars. London, for example, has had guns banned for some time now, and as it currently stands, their knife murder rate has now increased so much they are head-to-head with New York to see who can kill more people. So naturally, London is now looking to banning knives, or maybe they already have. And no, I'm not joking. This is the underlying problem that Colion, unfortunately, was unable to communicate to these people. It's not the weapon, it's the person. The data on that are perfectly clear. I respect his attempt to take a more easy-handed approach to this show because for a while it actually started to work. But at the end of the show, he just got shouted down, and unfortunately, most people watching this won't remember more than the last 5 minutes.
Intentionally running over people.
But
Well, not intentionally.
But
intentional murder is
it's
intentional.
still horrible, though, for someone to die in a car accident versus somebody really trying
Can
to...
I say, this is why we're never, no disrespect to either of you, we're never going to get anywhere on this issue. The best we can hope for is a better integration of data, because I'm sick and tired of reading in the newspaper the following day, well, there was this warning sign, and this agency knew this, and this knew this, and the left hand and the right hand are just not coordinating. That we ought to be able to get done.
How much more data do you need? We have data. We have mountains of data. And with those same data, you sit there and say, well, we just can't come to an agreement. Neera and Colion both have access to the same information equally. So I agree with Michael that we won't come to an agreement because neither side is actually looking for an agreement. Go back and count how many times anyone agreed with Colion on any of the issues they spoke about. Has any single of these people even considered the fact that guns might not be the problem and that maybe they are the ones who are wrong? No, of course not. This is Bill Maher.
And I don't disagree with that at all. But also the last point I wanted to make with respect to you seeing the number of guns out there and you feeling some type of way is I look at guns differently than you do.
Yes.
And there was a point in time where
Somehow saying yes you do is a valid counterpoint on this show. I really don't know how, but the people cheer for it, and I honestly don't think they even know why they're cheering at this point.
I looked at it, there was a point in time where I looked at it probably the same way you did, right? I had about as an organic progression of firearm ownership as one can have. I was against guns, I didn't like them. But I went to the range one time and I shot a gun, and that changed for me. And so now I can see a myriad of reasons for why someone would own a firearm, whether it be recreation, sports, collecting, so forth and so on. So when I see those number of guns up there, my mind doesn't automatically go to, oh my God, that's horrible and that's bad.
I totally hear what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying to you is, what you're trying to do is say that progressives, liberals, whatever, want to ban guns. No one's saying ban your gun. We're saying regulate them.
Neera is so close-minded about guns that she can't even strawman someone sitting across from her. Colion did not say the word ban. He didn't say liberals. He didn't say left or right. He didn't say anything about that. To me, it sounded like he was going to make a point about how his perspective changed and how he saw both sides in their own light and how he made a decision between them. Of course, we'll never know where he was going because Neera makes up a fantasy argument and then disagrees with it while Colion is trying to make his actual argument. Neera extracted what she wanted to hear and assumed that Colion went full stereotypical, they want to take our guns. Then she follows up with, well, no one is going to ban your gun, even though that's not what Colion said, in a really disrespectful tone that Colion never once took in this video. But going back to Neera, she wants more background checks and checks for mental illness, for certain types of guns, and so on. Do you remember from before how she acted about the guy who had over 500 guns? Do you think she wouldn't classify that as an addiction? Do you think she wouldn't make addiction a precursor for denying someone the ability to purchase another firearm? If Neera stood on one point for more than 4 seconds, she might actually be forced to talk about how her vision could work. But that doesn't happen, and she just blathers on.
So people with mental illness have background checks, a variety of things about certain types of guns. No one is saying you can't have a gun. And I know the NRA always wants to say people are saying ban guns, but they're not. They're simply saying for my safety and the protection of children and other people, we should have regulations like background checks on every single gun.
Now, how would you enforce that?
Okay.
You know, as they've done in the past.
If we're going to suggest a solution, at least have something that's enforceable, right?
It is enforceable.
So how
we
would you
have
enforce
background
it?
checks.
How would you
Do them
enforce a
for
private
gun
background check?
shows. Do them for regular.
No,
we have had discussions of bills. The NRA fights them. The Toomey Mansion bill. Support that bill. Would you support that bill?
After you answer my question.
How
would you enforce?
When did I lose control of this whole show? Okay, more of this go on NRA TV and you can debate them for a whole hour.
You see what I mean? Colion puts all his final effort into getting Neera pinned on one point, and she can't answer. She gets bailed out, and Bill calls the show.
Thank you, everybody. We gotta go. I'm hungry.
This was a really mixed discussion. In my opinion, I think Colion won more fights in total, but the ones he lost are the ones that more people are going to remember because they seem to hit a little harder. I honestly think that Neera and this strangely quiet table will refuse guns to the death and will never consider another perspective on that subject. That may sound harsh, but I think their own behavior justifies my opinion. What do you think? Anyway, I played as much of their video as I could to prevent taking their points out of context, and I hope you'll let me know if you think I missed something, was wrong on a point, or missed the mark entirely. I strongly encourage anyone seeing this to please watch the original video for yourself and see whom you agree with. I want to stress that I don't care about winning a debate like Neera. I want to know what's true. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed.